That's all I'm going to say. I just looked at headline stories in the last probably 2 hours, and I'm so horrified by the things I'm reading that I just want to scream, but it would hurt your ears if I did that into a microphone. But I'm looking at these stories. A Mississippi police officer responds to a shooting victim call, an emergency call. Officer LaQuandia Cooley said she was responding to a call on Sunday at about 2 a.m. for a shooting in Hazelhurst without knowing she was related to the victim. We initially responded to the call not knowing when I made it over there the person was going to be my son that was lying there. Her son, 20-year-old Charles Stewart Jr., had been shot in the head and had already died by the time she arrived. She found him lying in the middle of the street. The next headline I looked at was, and that was Mississippi. Then Philadelphia, 13 people, including 7 children, died in a fire at a 3-story row home in Philly on Wednesday morning. Philadelphia police described the address as a single-family home converted into 2 apartments in the city's Fairmount neighborhood. It was terrible. This was one of the worst fires I have ever been to, said Deputy Fire Commissioner Craig Murphy. Losing so many kids is just devastating. Keep these babies in your prayers. 7 children perished in that fire. And those were just the first 2 that caught my attention. There were more. But I'm not going to assault you with all the assaults that but I do have to add the one other one that I woke up to this morning and have been just infuriated about for the last couple of hours. And this happened in Illinois, of course, where a disarmed Illinois police officer desperately begged for her life before a heartless thug executed her with her own gun. She was murdered in cold blood on December 29th as she and Officer Tyler Bailey investigated a noise complaint at a Bradley area motel. The other officer was hospitalized and is fighting for his life. And so they arrested 25-year-old Darius Sullivan and 26-year-old Isandria Harris in connection with the incident. Now let me ask you a question. Does a thug like that, who pulled the trigger while this police officer was begging for her life, shoots her in the head with her own gun, does he not deserve the death penalty? If not, what purpose does the death penalty serve? I wish that I could be, maybe like I used to be when I was a young, idealistic, left-wing lunatic. And I would say, well, there's never a good reason to take life. But I live in 2022 now, and that's a good reason. That there is a good reason for a death penalty. Whoever turned that row house into apartments, which resulted in a fire that couldn't be extinguished and 13 people dead, 7 of them children. If that doesn't deserve some serious punishment, tell me what does. And so after I read all of that stuff, which was pretty serious in my mind, I then had to see how we now have number of these district attorneys all over the place who have decided they're not going to prosecute criminals who commit crimes. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, where do we go wrong? Where did this society go so crazy off the charts? And what are we going to do about it? Because that's really the question. I'm not ready to give up. I can talk about COVID. I can talk about the fact that we have an insane amount of mistrust or distrust. If you heard my 3-minute segment this morning or yesterday, you understand why the people are so mistrustful of the media and of government. Because we've been lied to so much. It never ends. Every day a new lie is revealed. And I don't know about you, but I don't believe much. And I listen and I watch and I calculate and I see what gets all the attention in this country. Stupid things. And I must admit, to a significant extent, I pay attention to some of those stupid things. I don't want to do it anymore. I really don't. Now I have more anti-gun legislation, not just in the pipeline, it's already a done deal. Now every gun dealer is going to perhaps have to provide a safety device or insist that you have a safety device to secure your gun, or you can't buy your gun. Let me just, give you a little bit of history about guns in America. In the 1800s, the 19th century, and in the 1900s, the 20th century, you could write a check and put it in an envelope and send it to Smith & Wesson or Remington or whatever dealer was in existence at the time, and they would mail you back a weapon because you have a constitutional right to carry a weapon in this country. A gun, not just any weapon, a gun. And yet, it's amazing to me that now we got every kind of regulation and restriction to who can have a weapon and who not. Mind you, criminals get guns no matter what we do, no matter what laws there are in place. Criminals will get guns. They'll get them like this thug in Illinois who took the gun away from the police officer and then shot her to death. So meanwhile, you're worried about me? You have politicians who are worried about me? It takes real chutzpah to make that case. And now I'm listening to what's going on in California, where it's all universal mail-in voting. It's a done deal. You know what that means? Well, let me frame this as simply as I can for those few liberals left in this listening audience who aren't too embarrassed to even turn a radio on or actually to breathe and take up oxygen. Let me just give you a heads up. Well, maybe I shouldn't even bother. At some point, you have to admit that if Darwin was right, they will eventually disappear. But what that universal voting law in California actually means, in the simplest terms that even a liberal can understand, is one-party rule forever in California. That's it. No wonder Devin Nunes said, I think I'm going to go run this social media company because I'm a Republican in California. And now with this universal mail-in voting, Mickey Mouse could win an election against me if that's what the Dems decide they want. You just have to pay a little bit of attention and realize that a lot of us are feeling very hopeful about these midterm elections. And we're, gung-ho. We'll get back the House and we'll get the majority in the Senate. And then come 2024, we're going to take back the White House. Let me tell you something. Don't be so sure, because these people are already plotting how, no matter what the public wants or what the voting constituency of this country wants, the legal, legitimate voting constituency, no matter what they want, they have ways to circumvent our wants. And universal mail-in voting, that's one of them. That's one of them. And this extended voting, hey, you can start voting in September and you can finish voting in January. Why not, right? If that's what California wants, that's what California will have. And if they want, immigrants who have no green cards and no, citizenship, if they want to vote, well, in California's opinion, they certainly should be voting in municipal elections. And then ultimately, that's the door opening to voting in any election. That's what they're doing. And if you don't think that's what they're doing, well, then you belong in the Democrat Party. You really do. Because you're about as with it as the President of the United States, who yesterday was talking about, how here we are in 2020. Man, he didn't just lose 1 year. I have trouble when the year changes. We don't write checks so much anymore, but in the old days when we wrote checks, it would take me like 2 or 3 weeks to get used to writing the new year. But now we don't even have to really worry about that because everything's done online, and the little automatic, date filler, they give you a calendar and you just push the date you want, and that's it. But certainly when I conduct myself, when I was doing preparation for my show, and when I list the various pieces of my show during any given day, I do list the date. And I have not had too bad a struggle this first week in changing over from 21 to 22. But I'll be darned if at any point I would write 2020. I mean, this guy is lost, and it's terrible. It's hard to watch at this point. And apparently the media thinks, well, we'll just make it look like it was no big deal. We won't mention it, or we won't cover it. We won't even notice it. How does that work? How does the Fourth Estate not mention, with the exception of I think maybe 1 or 2 people on the Fox News network and 3 or 4 people on the Newsmax, how come nobody else mentioned that Joe Biden referred to this year as 2020? Man, this guy lost 2 years. But hey, it's elder abuse if I say anything. It isn't elder abuse that they ran him in the first place, but it's elder abuse if I mention that. It's pretty tragic when you think about it. You can't trust your political class. You can't trust the medical profession, or at least not the medical profession and the public health professionals that are making decisions about what we should do with this virus. Can't trust the media. Who can you trust? Can't even trust, let me put it to you this way. What I've discovered is you can't even trust your inner circle anymore. You can't trust members of your own family anymore. We're in a new paradigm where ratting you out is perfectly acceptable. Or just divorcing themselves from you and your family members. Where brothers and sisters are feuding, and mothers and daughters and fathers and sons are feuding. It's all biblical, but it's really tragic. And for those of you who think that, it's a big deal whether AOC thinks everybody wants her or not, that's a 2-second news bite. The real stories, the ones that are being ignored, those are the stories that I'm going to talk about. What are we going to do? How are we going to rescue this country? Because it's got to happen soon. And I'm tired of committees. I forgot who said it last night, but somebody said, I think it was Marjorie Taylor Greene. She said, what's the difference if they take back the House? What, are they going to start a committee? What, are they going to, do an investigation? Nobody ever is held accountable for the misdeeds. Nobody, ever. Not James Comey, not Hillary Clinton. Nobody. But they still keep going after the Trumps, even though they can't find anything to actually hang them with. It's just beyond my comprehension. But that's because I think. So I went back to, I told you that on Audible, I'll reread books that I read in the past that seem particularly relevant to what's going on right now. And so my latest adventure, started this morning, is rereading, or actually listening to, Jordan Peterson's book, 12 Rules for Life, or whatever it's called, 10 Rules for Life. I forgot how many rules it is. But it really talks about the dynamic of what do you want? Do you want to be right, or do you want to be happy? That's how I always frame things when I'm trying to figure out which direction to go in. because happiness is not all that important if I sacrifice my integrity. Political class is supposed to think that way, but they don't. Anyway, let me take a break. Don't forget, coming up at 1 o'clock, Dan Bongino. At 4 o'clock, Ben Shapiro. 6 o'clock, the WPTV local news. And then, of course, tomorrow morning, we begin again with the one and only the two and only Jen and Bill. But for now, just wait. I'll be right back. I know I sound frustrated, and I know you feel frustrated. That's the most amazing part about what I do, is I do get this feedback from people who tell me that often when I'm ranting and raving about these things, they feel better because they think they're crazy or alone, when they're feeling this way. And then I articulate it and I back it up, and they realize that, maybe I'm not so crazy. Maybe this is really a mess. And maybe we need to alter our plans or to just go in a different direction. I'm looking at California, and I'm watching this mail-in voting become the rule in a state which is notoriously left-wing. I assure you that they didn't make that a new rule because they thought it would benefit fairness. They made that the new rule so a guy like Larry Elder won't run for California governor this year. And guess who announced immediately after this ruling by Governor Newsom that all voting was going to be mail ballots? Larry Elder said, I'm not running. I'm not running. Why would I run? Because Larry Elder needs to do what he does. He wants to make a difference. He does make a difference. I say that all the time. I know yesterday I jokingly said, well, maybe I ought to run for office. No. Some of us have a very distinct role to play. And it's not as politicians, because politicians have lost all credibility, and basically mainstream media has lost all credibility, and people are now turning to alternative sources. We've always been the alternative source. Talk radio has always been nothing like everything else, although everything else is becoming more and more like us, not in a good way. Why is it that you can turn on any news channel, cable news or a network, showing a news program, and you will hear all kinds of, nonsense on any given broadcast that has absolutely nothing to do with the State of the Union. And by that, I mean with the condition of our country right now. I haven't even heard whether or not this president in name only, Joe Biden, is going to be delivering a State of the Union address. With all of the work from home Congress rules, and all of the desperate Democrats who are bailing as quickly as possible, and a number of Republicans as well, who don't want to run in elections coming up because they know they're going to be in tough places, tough positions. And so, let's make it really weird and not even have sessions where people are present. They've been voting in absentia for over a year in Congress. I beg your pardon. If it's not important enough for you to go to work, and put your mask on or do whatever it is that these ridiculous people have been doing, even though they even have the experts now saying that doesn't help. It does not. Yeah. And Nancy Pelosi always has these, color coordinated cloth masks that match her outfits, right? Well, guess what? It's now the government that's telling us those cloth masks don't do anything to prevent the spread of COVID-19, okay? But you guys said they did. So, and you said the vaccines were going to keep us all safe. So you've all been vaccinated for the most part. You've all got your colorful, unique masks. Some of them, of course, offensive to the other side, like the Let's Go Brandon masks, or in the case of the, the Congressional Black Caucus, the African flag masks. Okay, you've all made your point. Now go to work. We got work to do here. And if you're too scared to go to Washington to do it, then step down. Resign right now. And particularly in the Senate. If you're afraid to go to work, then you need to step down and let the governors of these states appoint the next senator for your state. Ooh, wouldn't that be something? I got to listen to Chuck Schumer. That moron is too kind a word to describe Chucky Schumer, really. But we'll blow up the filibuster because we have to get this voting legislation passed. Chuck, why don't you just say finish the sentence, tell the whole story. We have to get this new voting law passed, because if we don't, there won't be a Democrat elected for years. Say it, just say it out loud. Because we have lost the support, the backing of the people of the United States of America. The middle class don't support us. All these identity groups that we designed that were supposed to support us, the Hispanics, nope, they're moving away. The African Americans, well, they may not be moving away, but they're not very enthusiastic about voting for the slate of candidates you keep putting up. Yeah. So, we better change the voting rules then. We got to make sure it's, mail voting only, and who knows where those mail-in votes are coming from. Doesn't matter. We'll just make sure that the election results come out the way we want them to. Sick. It's sick and getting sicker by the moment, which is why I say, if not now, when? When you guys going to push back? This upcoming election, you need to push hard. You need to get all kinds of people elected to the local legislature, the state Senate, the state House. You hear them on this show. Get them elected. Do what you got to do to get them elected. And don't allow these sick, sorry politicians who jump from one office to the next, to the next, to the next, because this has become their career. And get some people in there who want to serve. That's all. And if you can't find any people that want to serve, I don't know what to tell you. They've created their own nightmare. Anyway, let me take a break. We got a lot to cover. I got to about 1/8 of everything I said I was going to talk about today. But I will keep it moving in the next half hour. So just stay right where you are. You're listening to The Joy. Oh, don't forget to download the app, the 850 WFTL app, so that you can listen to my moments in case you miss them during the day. They only come on twice a day, and they're not the most convenient times. So download the app so you can listen to the podcasts of the show, the 3-minute piece, and the No Restraint podcast. You got to have the app to be able to listen at your convenience when you want to. So do that now while you're thinking about it. All right, I'll be right back. Brakes applied. Back to the coronavirus. Can't stay away from it too long because it's just too consuming. We now have experts weighing in and saying that you can't just count cases. This is not the right metric to be using, because the more testing is done and the more transmissible this variant is, the more likely that people are going to test positive to it. That's not our issue. We don't have a vaccine to prevent you from getting it. We have vaccines that prevent you from getting so sick that you require hospitalization and so sick that you die. So if they're working, as they should be working, well, then you won't have hospital admissions, will you? And that's what we're seeing. We got all of these cases that they're counting, and everybody's getting hysterical over the number of cases. 200,000. But the hospital admissions numbers aren't climbing that way. Dr. Fauci just said on Sunday that many infections cause few or no symptoms. So we should be focusing on the hospitalizations as opposed to the total number of cases. Now, of course, you have other experts that want a case count, that has value. You know why it has value to them? Because they can keep people in a state of panic and alarm. Even the president had to, confuse the public when he said this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated, when in fact it is not. It is the exact opposite. this super contagious Omicron variant is raging across the country, and it is attacking the vaccinated in actually higher numbers than the unvaccinated. But even if it were just comparable numbers, what does that tell you? It tells you that this team, this COVID-19 response team at the White House right now, doesn't have a clue. And what they're trying to convince you and me of is that this is just like the original pandemic. That we got to have vaccines, and now we have to have booster shots, and we have to have all of these things. Even if you're fully vaccinated, you got to wear a mask, and your kids can't go to school. And even though it's highly unlikely, it's actually very unlikely that you'll become seriously ill. And then, this president continues to say, there's no excuse for anyone to be unvaccinated. How about, I don't need an excuse. I'm a free person living in a free country. I can do what I think is in my best interest, and my children's best interest. We're in a very different place than we were 2 years ago or even a year ago. We have not lost control. We do not have shortages right now. Well, we do have shortages, but you know what the shortages are? The shortages are in staffing, because various hospitals and other institutions have been firing medical professionals who aren't vaccinated. Now think about that for a moment. I was just reading a story about, of all places, the Mayo Clinic, right? The Mayo Clinic just let go of, I can't remember if it was 700 or 900 of their staff because of the vaccination status. Now, this is like one of the finest medical institutions, and I'm supposed to believe that it's better for people who come from all over the world seeking treatment at the medical facilities. They're laying off roughly 1% of the staff across all locations. Because, of course, they had set a January 3rd deadline. All of their employees had to get at least the first dose of a COVID-19 vaccine. And this was their statement today. This will make your hair hurt. While the Mayo Clinic is saddened to lose valuable employees, we need to take all steps necessary to keep our patients, workforce, visitors, and communities safe. If individuals released from employment choose to get vaccinated at a later date, the opportunity exists for them to apply and return to Mayo Clinic for future job openings. Okay, so you fire employees for exercising their constitutional rights. What can I say? You have to be wondering if you're an employee of a place like the Mayo Clinic or any of these other large-scale institutions. By the way, the airlines could not function this way, so they ended up saying, 5 days, come back. And they even got the government to sign on to that 5 days. 5 days is enough. Unless you're unvaccinated, then it's 10 days. Somebody recently told this to me, a friend of mine who chose to not be vaccinated and has gotten this Omicron, not very sick, but has gotten it nonetheless, tested positive. She said, well, because I'm unvaccinated, I have to isolate for 10 days. Everybody else has to isolate for 5 days. I said, are you symptomatic? No. Explain it to me, Lucy. So if you're flying in a confined airplane, you can come back after 5 days. But if you're a teacher in a classroom, you want to go to virtual teaching. Even though the kids in there really are not carriers or spreaders of the virus. We know this. This is not my guess. This is what 2 years of dealing with this has showed us. And that's it's this inability on their part to understand that the public is tired of the lies, and people are perfectly willing to walk away from employers who are treating them so unfairly. People who work 19, 20 years at the Mayo Clinic, whatever capacity, in the medical profession or in auxiliary positions, lost their jobs. They're saying things like, my views don't matter. Just because I hold certain views to be true, it doesn't matter. I always believed in where I worked until now, someone said. And there are all kinds of legal challenges happening all over the place. That OSHA requirement was blocked by a federal judge, and then it was overruled last month, and now you got this mandate set to take effect again on Monday. And, I can just pray that other Republican state attorneys general like ours, Ashley Moody, pushes back on this nonsense and stop. Just stop. Stop telling us that we have to live in fear. That mass hysteria that they're causing, this psychosis. It's really, Dr. Malone is right. It's like a psychosis. Public health experts, they sit around and they tell you, well, there will be collateral damage, but we have to weigh the positive with the negative. And right now we're convinced that we know what's best for you. So, get your shots, get another shot. Now Israel's looking for a fourth shot. Come on. What is going on here? Does anybody not see how unwilling they are to let go of this? Even though, the worst is over. I know that sounds, jaded of me. And I know that many of you have lost loved ones. Everybody's lost somebody. I get it. But it's not working the way they said it was going to work. So maybe it's time to try something different. Maybe this Omicron is actually nature's way, if you're not a believer, or if you are a believer like me, God's way of finally ending this pandemic by giving people natural immunity and not making them suffer too much to get it. That's it. I hate to be so blunt, but, if it takes this wildly transmissible COVID, my recommendation is do not get tested if you're asymptomatic. If you don't have any of the symptoms, and they keep changing what the symptoms are, but if I'm not deathly ill, I am not taking a test. If they insist I have a test to travel on an airplane, I won't be traveling on an airplane. I have some tickets to go see Andrea Bocelli in February. If they tell me I have to have a negative test to go into the concert, then I'll be listening to my Andrea Bocelli MP3s because it's enough already. It's ridiculous already. And it's destroying an entire generation. An entire generation has never seen a smile from their teacher, doesn't know what their teachers even really look like. I'm an adult, and I can barely recognize people I know when they're covered with these absurd masks. And now, of course, they're all wearing the K95s. Oh, yes, got to have the real mask. And then you got to pull the what is that, plastic visor that look like you're a welder, like the Secretary of Defense. Oh, my God, he had on 2 masks and then the visor. He's triple vaccinated, and he got it anyway. So come on. I mean, let's just face facts. Somebody just said to me today, well, they're not taking precautions anymore. Yeah, because you can't stop it any more than you can stop the flu or stop a common cold. All right? This is not a virus that you have to do something extraordinary to catch. You don't have to be an IV drug user or have unprotected sex with someone who already has it. No. You can get it just by living your life. So how are we going to live with this? That's the question. And did you get your at-home test? I ordered some at-home tests. COVID-19 test, only because I have a friend coming in this weekend and she can't get back to her home country if she doesn't have a test. And I was afraid that maybe lines would be too long. I keep seeing these horror stories, although I don't see those lines down here. Everybody seems to be getting tests if they need them. But, I bought the home test kits so she'd have some proof and could go home. Golly, what a way to live. It's not really living. It's all imperfect. Everything is imperfect. Life is imperfect. And we just have to push back and say, no, we don't want to hear the case count anymore. Tell us how many people were hospitalized. Tell us how many people, were deathly ill. But don't tell me how many people tested positive, because I can tell you right now, I could probably take that test right now, go into the living room and get that, at-home test that I purchased for my friend. I could probably take that test now, and I'd probably, test positive just because it's everywhere. But I ain't sick. So guess what? I'm not taking the test. Anyway, stay right where you are. When we come back, we'll finish up this hour, and we'll be on our way. Just so much fear and so much nonsense that's going on right now. Got an email from a friend who said, I've been tracking, and the first 10 to 15 minutes of each half-hour news programs on all of the alphabet soup networks are all about the virus. Well, of course they are. This is what's necessary to keep people in a state of panic. And if people were not in a state of panic, do you really think they'd be going along with all of these draconian moves? I'm going to do a podcast. I'm going to record it this afternoon. I don't know when it'll actually, drop. May not drop until next Monday. I don't know. We'll let you know. But these policies are, they don't make any sense at all to the scientific community or even to somebody who's just got a reasonable outlook on life, right? Why do parents accept that universities, which is supposed to be the bastion of critical thinking, right? The where you learn how to use reason and where you learn how to use logic, they're adopting policies that have literally derailed education. And this is not just education that comes free, but they're upending college educations. And they have all these ridiculous COVID protocols for these young people who stand very little risk. Very little risk. And that's why it becomes painfully aware, I'm painfully aware of it, and apparently now a lot more people are becoming painfully aware of the fact that we have sacrificed and compromised the future generations to safeguard us, safeguard the 50 plus, the boomers and the seniors. Is that a good idea? I'm just asking, because it doesn't make any sense to me. And now they're going to gin up. Today it's all COVID. Mark my words. Tomorrow it'll all be insurrection. Every hour of every minute will be the January 6th hysteria, which gives them hope that they could actually pass this bill, this election rigging bill, because that's all it is, an effort to make sure that, only Democrats can get elected in this country, because they know they can't get elected based on their policies. So as we get close, well, we're not close. Tomorrow is the anniversary, the 1-year anniversary of the breach of the Capitol building. And the leaders are ginning up hysteria because they want to pass this bill, which will transform the electoral process in this country and will give Democrats permanent majorities in all three, actually, branches of government. In addition to that, this is how they, how they keep you frightened. COVID on Wednesday and insurrection on Thursday. And then we can return to COVID, depending on how good Thursday goes, on Friday. Schumer literally sent a letter saying, oh, we can't have the 60-vote rule for most legislation, which, by the way, he used in his favor throughout most of his career. And he says the Senate is going to consider changes to Senate rules on or before January 17th for legislation to protect the foundation of our democracy. Well, so far, Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema have said no, 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 no. So he's got to make them panic now. You want insurrectionists to come back? It wouldn't surprise me if they staged something tomorrow. You see, because Americans want, and if they don't want it, they should want it, elections to be fair and to be free and accurate. The people who rallied at the Capitol on January 6th last year were angry because the 2020 election was not fair, was not free. And you can blame voting machines or you can blame the bulk mail ballot strategy, whatever you want to blame. But there are lots of people, myself included, who said something went wrong here. And while breaching the Capitol was the wrong response, it doesn't invalidate my complaint that the 2020 election was severely tainted, if not stolen. Anyway, I thank you for your time this time. Until next time, I'll be back tomorrow in the middle of the January 6th hysteria, if it be his will and he delays his coming. So just rely on the truth and stop believing all the lies. They'll be coming at you in full force tomorrow. And may God bless you. And may God bless the United States of America.